Welcome back to our podcast, The World Around Us. I'm Cristian Mejia, and I'm going to be your host for today. I would like to first of all thank all of our listeners because in the last week podcast we did, the one where we talk about absurd laws in different countries and the reason for them to be, we got over 10,000 reproductions. So I'm very grateful with all of you. Today, we're going to talk about cross cultural communication. This theme, in recent years, it has become a very important topic to deal with, mainly because before, a person could spend almost his whole life without dealing with different cultures because of work, because they didn't travel to other countries, they didn't interact with other people, they were very close, they will know a massive communication like today. But now, a person who has never traveled can have more common encounters with this type of people. Mainly, as I said before, we have now multinational works. After the pandemic, we had a lot of virtual works. Mainly when we talk about freelancers, and even with a lot of tourists that has become a very common uh, place to go to our countries, mainly here in Latin America. As an example of this, we have the case of a very common work, as I said before, the freelancers, for example, in Kenya, in Africa. Before, they didn't have no internet, no way to communicate with the out world of them, with another countries, maybe even in Africa. But now we could find a lot of freelancers that are working for multinational companies. One example is of a boy in Kenya that he had never imagined to work for a multinational company. But now he works in the software part of a very important company of the United States, and he's working from Kenya, from his computer, with people of Italy, England, United States, Canada, as a freelancer that he said that he now are taking about more than 10 jobs at the time with different companies all around the world. As another example, we have Pellegrini Riccardi, who has a TED talk where he talks about this thing. He talks about how has been his life as an Italian in different countries around all Europe, how has been his treat in different airports because of his accent, of different situations of the daily life as him and as Antania in different countries with the police, with his companions, with his workers, with his even family, as his dad, his grandpa, and all about that. For our very first example, we have our first guest of the day is Juan Nieto. He's going to tell us a little about his experience traveling the world and living with different cultures.
Thank you so much, Christian. Firstly, I have to say that it's a pleasure being here with with you, with professional. And yeah, I have to say, well, my name is Juan Nieto. I've been living here in the US since the last year, I think so. I've been having problems communicating with my partners of the work, and I don't know how to give a solution for it because, well, it's stressing trying to communicate, trying to give your idea, and people doesn't understand you. So maybe today the professional can give me a solution.
Juan, the pleasure is mine, especially having you here as a guest and talking about your personal experience. Maybe as we were talking before the record, Could you tell us, to the audience and to the expert, a little bit about your experience before? Mainly, as you said, before you went to live full in USA, you had some troubles. You had traveled to another countries, and there you had to take a decision to finally live full on USA. Could you tell us a little about it?
Well, continues saying what Christian said. I've been traveling in many places. It wasn't too difficult because I don't know, we tried to understand us. I was just a tourist, but nowadays I've been trying to be a part of a society, just like a citizen, one of the society. Yep. It's difficult because, well, I try to communicate with sophisticated words that I believe that it helps to communicate, but many of the cases the people don't understand me. In my mind, in my head, I have the idea that I have the the correct word for the situation, and I think they understand, but it is not. Um, Another thing is that, well, I used to be a social person, but here in my work I don't have too much partners or even friends who I can talk with because it's a kind of difficult to communicate. And well, the psychologists and all the people know that we are social people. We need to be involved with others, so that uh, it's like a kind of bad feeling because, well, it's difficult to not have your family with you, and you can also communicate with others. And finally, well, I don't know. As my experience, as the presenter said, I've been a tourist around the world. Mm, it wasn't too difficult because those travels were with my family, with people of the same culture as me. But now I don't have anybody where I can go to talk or that even he can translate me. So I have two questions for the specialist, that what I can do, what if I want to communicate, which are the types of I believe is cross culture communication, how I can give a better experience for the people and even for me to show them that I know how to talk and I'm a very good professional, a good person. So I'm expecting the solutions that he can give me to today, so I can prove it for this week and for my time I can live here in the US. So, well, I'm gonna hear right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Juan, for sharing your experience and your problems you had traveling and living in the USA. So, for this, I want to introduce to you and the audience our expert, who is David Corredor. Who we could say he's an expert because he had a lot of research in this area for years and had a lot of articles that became famous because of his results in the investigation of this area. So I want you to welcome him And to ask you a little question, David, what is your opinion on what he said of his problems?
Well, I think that what my partner was talking about is a real can be understand like a really huge problem in some occasions of communicating between persons by misunderstanding and others that can make that communication fail between them. And I think one of the solutions to this problem is like to learn and be informed more about the different types of communications in order to be clear by speaking to someone. And I want to thank you so much being for letting me be in this program. Thank you so much.
No, the pleasure is mine, David, to finally have you here as a guest for our podcast. I also think that the main solution or the first thing we could do when we encounter this problem is to learn. Learning about this type of communication is different of the normal communication we mainly have with our family or friends of the life. So we could encounter a better way these situations and problems. So I know, as we talked before, the topic of cross-cultural communication has a lot, but a lot of subtopics that we could learn and encounter. So I think that because of time, mainly to not make this podcast so long, I would ask you, David, if maybe you could talk us and teach us a little bit of the different types of cross-cultural communication.
All right, now I'm going to start talking about the different types of cross-cultural communication because I think it's a very important point to touch in order to know what are we talking about when we speak about cross-cultural communication. There are five of them, and the first is awareness. It all starts with this being aware that different countries have different ways and times of doing things. Your way, it's not the way, and neither is theirs. As in a marriage, a common culture is to be developed over the years, and yes, it takes time, patience, but mostly the will to trust and understand what drives the person or the organization you're dealing with. The second is preparation. Before you meet your foreign colleague, take the time to read up on their country's rituals and etiquette. Should you address your colleague by first name or not? Something simple like how to greet them is probably cultural determined. In some countries, a hug, a tap on the shoulder, or a kiss are quite normal, whereas in others this common close to harassment. You should not aim at perfect mastery of their etiquette, though. The fact that you're taking the trouble to do some research and that you try to do things right is often enough to show people that you care. Right? When going to the third one, that is the language. One of the culture's main expression is language. As soon as possible, open their mouths to speak. You can more or less place them in a geographical region or social cultural subgroup. When you and your counterpart speak different languages, working with an interpreter to avoid misunderstandings. An added bonus is that the interpreter does not only know both languages, but also the underlying cultures. Interpreters will hence translate both the words and the cultural context. If you speak the same language as your counterpart but some from different countries, you're not of the woods yet. Case in point are the difference between Dutch and Flemish. One and the same word may mean something totally different. When you speak the same language, you should try to avoid slang and ask for clarification when something that has said does not make sense. You may have false friends interfering with the conversation. The fourth one is humor. Being extremely careful with humor. It is often said that jokes don't translate, and that is because, well, they don't. Moreover, in many cultures, it is not acceptable to crack jokes in a business context. Sarcasm, the basic ingredient of British humor, can be immensely funny if you are used to do. If you're not, you can come across as an insult or, worse still, an attack. Most of all, avoid telling jokes about your colleague countries. It is a slippery slope that will leave you crippled 9 times out of 10. And the fifth and the last one is openness. The person opposite you may just as nervous about wading in the multicultural cross-cultural waters as you are. There is no weakness in admitting that you are nervous because you don't want to mess up. Ask for feedback. This will give you counterpart the opportunity to help you along the way, and most of all to connect with you. Vulnerability is, after all, human and something that everyone can relate to, wherever they came from. Many books have been writing about effective cross-cultural communication, and all these insights are very helpful. They should definitely be considered as parts of the puzzle, but not as absolute truths. Think of it: if you might be French, you may have the same cultural references as your fellow Frenchmen, but feel more comfortable with the English way of doing business. In cross-cultural communication, and indeed communication as such, connected is the objective. Language, both verbal and non-verbal, is the key. If you put the tools and partners in place to connect across cultures, you will stop seeing hurdles as welcome challenges that help you reinforce the message you want to share.
Wow, very very interesting topic to learn today, mainly about these different types of cross-cultural communication. So it's time to say goodbye. We are ending this podcast for today. First of all, I want to thank David and Juan for coming today as a guest, mainly because we could talk about different situations or problems that people could have in different countries, as Juan told us, and the different type of solution maybe we could do or things we could learn about this cross-cultural communication, as David told us. So that's all. That's all for today. I'm very glad to the audience that get to this point, that hear the podcast. The next week we are continuing the theme. We were going to talk about different cultures and the difference between like the common cultures as United States or Latin America to other different countries. So stay tuned with that. In the description, you could find the different articles we talk about that David had made in his career. So thank you all.